Hey guys, welcome to the Mom Show. I'm your host, Courtney Doyle, and this is a place I am giving you permission to not have it all together. Today's episode is going to grip your heart. My guest is Lauren Sisler, ESPN sports reporter, keynote speaker, and author of the memoir, Shatterproof. Lauren shares a story that is both heartbreaking and healing. At just 18 years old, she lost both of her parents within 5 hours of each other to opioid addiction. A battle that had been kept hidden, a truth she herself ran from for over a decade. But today she's here with us not just to share that story, but to remind every mom listening, your story matters, even the parts you wish you could erase. We're talking about addiction this month, its impact, its silence, and the lies we often believe because of it. Lauren gets honest about her fear of tarnishing her parents' legacy by speaking the truth. She opens up about shame, generational patterns, grief, and how her Aunt Linda, stepping in without hesitation, taught her what fierce, sacrificial love looks like. This episode is a reminder that healing happens when we bring the truth into the light, that falling in love with your story isn't about pretending it's perfect. It's about letting God redeem even the shattered parts. So whether you've walked through addiction, loved someone who has, or carry the weight of shame about any part of your story, lean in. Lauren's words will offer you grace, perspective, and hope. Let's jump in. Guys, welcome back to the show. Today, my guest is Lauren Sisler. And Lauren and I were just chatting that we started communicating in 2022. I can't believe it's taken this long to get you here on the show. And some of that has been, just life, right? You've had a busy life since 2022 because you became a mom. So
I
welcome to the show.
did. Hello. It's great to be here. Thank you, Courtney. I know I am literally like shook when you said 2022. I'm like, dang, we've been talking that long, but so glad that we've made this happen. And, more life. Like here we are. And I think that
Right.
obviously now that I am a mom, it probably adds it definitely adds another layer to this whole conversation for sure.
Right.
And here we are. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And yeah, I feel like we have a lot of things in common.
We
A
do.
lot of parallels here with our families and life and all the things. So it's pretty cool.
We do. I'm going to start us off because what connected us was the story of addiction. And it's not an easy story. And so I want to start right off the bat and let the listener know that this is going to be a hard story, but it's also going to be a hopeful story and a meaningful story. And so I'm going to let you take the mic, Lauren, and will you take us back and will you share your story?
Yes, I appreciate that. It's a story that, you're going to obviously get the footnotes version. I know that you know a little bit more of it as you have dug quite a bit deeper into my story, but I'm going to give you guys my heart in this story because I think it's so important as I've told this story many times and now in a book. And then, of course, I do a lot of presentations, speaking events. I've really learned to lean into my heart and kind of just speak from there. And so, it's not an easy story. And I would have to say that growing up, we were the white picket fence family. Like my mom, my dad, my older brother, like we were the sports family, always on the go. I had this gymnastics career I was pursuing, wanted to be a collegiate gymnast, and I pedal to the metal and we're doing this thing. And so this was a family investment. This was a family adventure and a journey. And I felt like I had the full support of my parents. They were loving parents, the unconditional love that you hope that you get from those that you're surrounded by. And I was very fortunate in that. And so we really did what I believe to be the picture perfect family. I go off to Rutgers, set sail into my dreams, hopes, goals, aspirations. And, I get to Rutgers and I'm still super tight with both my parents. They were like my best friends. And growing up in Virginia, so we were about 8 hours away. So it was an 8 hour hike to get to Rutgers, but it was also a place where I was like, okay, I'm going to spread my wings and fly, but also still have the connection with my parents and my roots in Virginia. And so, I'm living life, doing life like I thought was scripted out for me and my family. And called my parents this particular evening, my second semester, my freshman year at Rutgers, and talked to my mom and dad on the phone, and we said our goodbyes and love yous, and that was it. And hung up the phone, went to bed, and I woke up to a phone call from my dad that night to let me know that my mom died. And It came as a huge shock because I'm like, we just talked on the phone. Mom's 45. It's the middle of the night. What happened? And my dad said, look, I can't explain it now. Get on the next plane you can. I'll be at the airport to pick you up. And so I frantically pack my bags. I get a plane ticket. I get home hours later. And instead of my dad there to pick me up, it was my uncle and my cousin to let me know that my dad too had passed away. And so within a matter of 5 hours, I get the call that my mom passed away, and shortly thereafter learned that my dad passed away too.
And in that moment that you stepped off the plane in the airport, you were expecting to see dad there to comfort you and to explain what in the world has happened. And now it's Uncle Mike, it's your cousin, and you have no knowledge that prior to these two events happening, that this was even a possibility that you would lose one or both parents. So let's go back. Uncle Mike has now said, hey, actually, your dad has passed away. What in the world are you thinking at this point that could have caused both of your parents to pass away in such a short time frame?
Well, it's interesting how the brain works and goes into protection mode because, I think back to those moments, those hours, those days that would follow. And my therapist has helped me to unpack some of this because we definitely remember things like in segments, right?
Mhm.
Fragments. And I'm taking myself back to sitting in the backseat of that car as we are driving out of the airport. Nobody says a word until I finally work up the courage and said to my Uncle Mike, hey, I just want to see my dad. Where's my dad? Because like you said, I had every intent of being at that airport, running and jumping in my dad's arms. I knew that my dad would make everything okay. That was how I envisioned everything going. And when he delivered that news, it was just like such a gut punch. What's interesting though, again, this is all being unpacked years and years and years later. I had not talked to my dad on the phone since we hung up. And so it was just frantic trying to figure things out. My dad had to go back to the hospital. He had to take care of things. There was so much going on. We lived in rural Virginia. My dad didn't have a cell phone. So as I'm traveling, frantically getting things together, he's in and out of the house. I'm not communicating with him at all. And so even when I got on that plane and knew, okay, my dad's going to be there, I got off that plane and I hadn't talked to him. And I think there was a little small piece of me that was like, okay, this is weird. We haven't talked. What's going on here? Communication was just very sporadic, even just with my family, with figuring out how I'm going to get home. But like to get to the airport and to suddenly see two other people that there to pick you up and it's not your dad, it's, oh. So it was definitely confusion. But then it was also relief because I'm like, thank goodness, like somebody I know, let's make sense of all this. But when we got in that car, like I truly believed that we were going to get in that car and we were going to go see my dad. Like he was taking care of things, everything, we lived an hour from the airport. So in those moments, and then as my uncle says that to me, I mean, it's just a complete like shock because I just talked to my parents the night before, just over like 12 hours later. Both parents, they seemed happy, they seemed good, they seemed fine. Mom's 45, dad's 52, like, nothing seems
Yeah.
amiss in those hours that preceded the news, and I'm just like, "Ugh." And then just to be told, "Get on the next plane you can," like, there is no time for explanation.
Yeah.
And so then this happens, and so what's crazy about this whole story is that of course, people want to know. Let's cut to the chase. What happened to your parents? People want to know. It's just like the natural curiosity. And people are cautious at first and maybe a little bit more tender about it and a little bit more reserved. But of course, then the questions start flying, and even the questions are flying for me. But I also did everything I could to protect my family and really protect my own feelings and emotions. And, I think that's where all of a sudden, like that we talk about the fragments of our memories, fragments of trauma and the things that kind of happen. Like it was like fight or flight mode for me. And I went into put them up, baby. Let's go
Yeah. Yeah.
immediately.
Sure.
And that really became now the narrative that I created, so much so that I believed it. So when people would ask what happened to your parents, I would say mom died of respiratory failure, dad died of a heart attack. Because where that came from in my mind, I knew my mom was taking medication. I knew my dad was taking medication, but specifically for my mom, I knew that she was taking medication. And I just started in my brain concocting this idea that, oh, mom was taking medication that was completely necessary, but she never ever made a choice to take the medication as not prescribed. Like in my mind, I was validating these thoughts, right? That it was necessary. She did no wrong. She made no ill choices. Addiction was never a part of it. Because guess what, Courtney? When I would say respiratory failure and heart attack, like that sounds so much better than
Yeah.
overdose. And so I latched onto that word respiratory failure, which that's really what happens when you overdose. But guess what? When you don't use that word addiction or overdose, people aren't quite as like on high alert. And then heart attack, right? Because how do you explain a father after losing my mom dying 5 hours later? Like, how do you explain that? How do you explain that in such a way that takes people away from the notion that he committed suicide, that it was intentional? Because then that's the other thing you're protecting, right? What was the motive? What was the why? What was the reason? And so that was something else I was unpacking. I think my family also did a good job of kind of not letting me go there. Hey, let's not focus on that right now. Let's focus on, hey, we've got to bury both your parents. You have a lot of decisions to make. Let's not focus on the why just yet. And I think in some ways that was also protection. And to explain that though was really hard because it's not like a car accident or something that is just there. It's okay, this doesn't make sense. And I think what's crazy about this whole story, and as you probably could unpack a little bit on your own as you read the book, I went back to Rutgers and ran with the story, even with my coaches, my athletic trainer, who is a medical professional. And I still to this day think, why did nobody like question me or why did nobody like correct me early on? And coming back to it full circle, my trainer, Kathy, said, who am I? Who am I to correct you? Who am I to say, that's not the story? That's not true. That can't be right. And I think that's where it just became this perfect opportunity to just gloss over everything.
Mm-hmm. And everybody was willing to gloss it with you because it is terribly painful and
Yeah.
shocking. And you're a young girl. You're having to navigate this now, no parents to talk to on your own, and now 8 hours away from the rest of your family. So it does make sense that those around you would allow you to sit in this protective story because they're wanting to protect you. And if that feels better for you, then that feels better for them knowing that this is what you believe. Because how do you look at somebody and say, that's a lie? Here's
Yeah.
the truth.
Especially with the circumstances and the things that were going on. And I will tell you this. So you talk about the idea of the lies. So Auntie Linda, my mom's sister, became a huge foundation for me, my Uncle Mike as well. And, I think that was the thing with my Auntie Linda because she was also in the same time frame uncovering the truth. She was just walking into it where I was running away from it. She's walking towards the truth and I'm running away from it. So she had the truth in her hands much sooner, willing to acknowledge and look at the truth much sooner than I was. And so when we would get to talking, conversations, things would get brought up, she would start to lean into the truth. And I was like, once again, fist, put them up, boom, boom, boom. I mean, I just destroyed her. Like, you are attacking my parents. Like, how dare you?
Right.
And anger. I was pissed. I was mad. I was like, no. And I felt in a lot of ways she became the enemy. And yet, really, I know what she, from her heart, from a loving place, was trying to lovingly share the truth in time. It wasn't an immediate, just like in your face. But I think that she was playing obviously with caution of, okay, I want to expose the truth in the most loving way I possibly can. But little did she know or me that this was going to be a long knockdown, drag out fight before I was willing to sit in it and be like, all right, this is it. This is really what happened and can't change it. Can't do anything about it.
Well, and the truth brings up so many other issues. Speaking from a mom who has experienced addiction with a child, I don't get the same empathy, and my son doesn't get the same compassion and understanding as what you just said, a car accident. Or if you have a child who has a debilitating disease, though addiction is a debilitating disease, it's a choice. So everybody falls into, he chose that. That's selfish. He shouldn't have hung out with those friends. He shouldn't have done that. And so it's lumped in with a lot of other emotions. And for me as a mom, of what did I do wrong? What could I have done better to have caused this? Which maybe as a daughter, you could have had the same feelings of, how did I miss this? How did I miss this was happening? Did I do something that drove my parents to feel like they needed to self medicate in the wrong way with what they were using? And so I think that's where it gets so easy for addiction to become a lie and to become a secret, because we start lumping ourselves into, why did those people make those choices? And gosh, do they love me at all? Because if you loved me, would you make that choice? You see how bad this is hurting me, but you keep making that choice. It's a whole other realm of emotions that we lump ourselves into the story, and we don't look at it as a true illness, no different than somebody suffering with cancer, somebody suffering with
Yep.
diabetes. They didn't
Hmm.
choose that, because I think people immediately are like, oh, they chose that. They chose to use that substance. How did you feel that ever whenever Auntie Linda was wanting to tell the truth and you were like, wait, hold on, I'm going to fight against the truth? Do you feel like you fought against some of the truth because you also were allowing some of the emotions to be personal and part of your identity as to why your parents felt this way or led them to this addiction?
Yeah, I definitely feel internally that warfare that was happening inside of me, because there were some financial strains that they were experiencing. And as the story goes, the timeline, I did get a call from my mom prior to them passing. And she said, "Hey, you're not going back to Rutgers next semester." And I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, why? We can't afford to keep you there." And I was on scholarship, not a full ride, but I didn't understand that, right? There is still a lot of money having to be dished out for me to stay in school, to survive, to live, to do all the things. And so I was just like, I saw an angry part of her. I saw a part of her that was mad, angry, upset. But then quickly that got glossed over. Once again, dad said, "Oh, her medication run out. She's just not feeling good. But hey, we're back on our feet. It's okay." And then a couple
Mhm.
days later, she sends me this card. She apologizes. She loves me just like the mom I always knew. And so I will say, in some of those moments, the questions did percolate. And, well, is it because of me? Because we're at Rutgers? Because my parents
Yeah.
devoted so much to my career in gymnastics that, like, we've gotten to this point where my parents are now having to potentially sell the house and to live a different lifestyle. Those questions did percolate in my mind. And I think it's so easy, Courtney, to become so inward facing. And that's not being selfish.
Mhm.
What that means is that suddenly we start to inherit the blame. We inherit the why. Ooh, what could we have done differently? So now we're inward
Mhm.
facing in all of our thoughts. And we suddenly think we own all control. And it was
Yeah.
all me. And if I would have done this different. So there was a lot of that. Now, we'll say hindsight. And I share this a lot with a lot of the presentations I do in the speaking events and whatnot as well. There were a lot of times where I just looked the other way. Things
Mhm.
that maybe I should have noticed, that I should have taken more careful consideration to, just some signs and things like that. First and foremost, you don't know what you don't know. And when I was younger, you learn certain things in school, and of course you have your DARE programs and like your awareness programs. But honestly, I was a gymnast that literally had my sights set on a college scholarship, and that's all I cared about. It was like gymnastics and schoolwork. And truth be told, that's all my parents cared about. Meaning, when I was going to go get a summer job, they're like, "Nope, schoolwork, gymnastics, focus, focus, focus." So I got really good at compartmentalizing things. I got really good at that competitive spirit of, you stay focused. It was always like focus, focus, focus. And I think that paid dividends in some ways, but also created some of this inability to see outside of this tunnel,
Mm.
that I was in. And I think we all can probably speak to that in some way. I mean, I
Absolutely.
wasn't paying attention to the fact that there's piles of bottles of prescriptions in the cabinet, all legally prescribed to my parents, by the way.
Right.
Well, that didn't alarm me. That didn't set me off to say, oh,
Yeah.
things like that. Obviously, the finances I mentioned. I'm not really paying attention to the fact that my mom's stroking a $10 check to the power company to keep the lights on. That stuff, they didn't bother us with that. They didn't consume us with those things. They usually, once again, they were really good at glossing over, sugarcoating things. And so, guess
Yeah.
who inherited that same ability? Me,
Right.
you know?
Right. Well, and that's true. And whenever somebody's living so deep in their addiction, they get very creative and very manipulative because they are centering everything around when is my next fix? How do I get to that next point? Like you just said, you were so laser focused on your grades and gymnastics. They were laser focused on keeping this a secret but keeping themselves because as we all know, with any addiction, if you're not consistently using, you are detoxing. And detoxing means very sick. And so it's this vicious cycle of how do I keep myself stable with the medications that I need or the drugs that I need, prescription or illegal, and how do I keep up the lie? And one of the two has to eventually run out. And unfortunately, that's what rehabilitation centers and NA and AA talk about, that hitting rock bottom, because one of the two, the lie runs out or the drugs run out. And unfortunately, when it comes to addiction, rock bottom could be death.
Yep.
And that's what it is for a lot of people, too many people, and people just are not talking about, I don't think, addiction the way that we should be talking about it because we do inward focus and say, what did I do to create this? What could I have done different? And you make a comment in your book that, gosh, it was so spot on. And I'm going to tell the listeners right now, this book was fantastic. I've shared that with you.
Oh.
I read it in a day. But when you made the comment about this, addicts are not the addicts of the 80s and 90s from the Reagan era, where you are assuming this is some homeless person on the side of the road, dirty, grungy, getting their quick fix. Addiction has come a really long way. And what you just said, this was prescriptions that were given to your parents by a medical professional. At one point after their passing, y'all discovered that I think the total was 490 pills that had been prescribed to your mother from January to March. Um, that is an
Absurd.
extreme amount. But I will say, as a mom who's had kids who've had wisdom teeth removed, you go get your child's wisdom teeth removed at the ripe young age of 15, guess what they're going to prescribe as the painkillers to send them home with?
Yep.
But
Hmm.
studies also show that you can take as little as 2 to 3 days of an opiate, a painkiller, and that's how quick somebody can become addicted to those medications.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the crazy thing. It can happen so quickly. And to not know the effect it can have. Okay, for me personally, so I had a deviated septum surgery back when I was going into my junior year in college. So they had to break my nose in 5 places. It was like super painful. It's partially genetic, gymnast. It was all the things. But long story short is they had prescribed me a Lortab. And I think I was so out of it, knocked out of it after anesthesia. Like, I don't even know what I was taking. My auntie was obviously giving it to me. Obviously, I was being given to it in a safe space. But here's the thing. I got so incredibly sick as a dog.
Mm.
But then my parents, for instance, like many others, a Lortab, an opioid, gives you the euphoric, don't have to worry about tomorrow. We're going to focus on the now. This is what I need. Just the carefree, now I feel better. 2 totally different experiences. And I
Mhm.
think in so many ways, so I don't drink, never have. Honestly, made that choice before when I was 15, that's when I go back to the timeline. Like when I was 15, because I was really starting to see it in high school and I'm riding around with kids that are smoking pot in the backseat of my car and like all the things.
Mm.
But I'm not doing it. It's not me. But that's when I really started seeing and getting introduced to a lot of the drug culture and of course the alcohol. And I just wasn't interested. I was around it. Don't get me wrong. Like I hung out with friends. I didn't necessarily condone it, but I definitely didn't like discriminate against it. I was just like, I'm not doing it. Whatever. Who cares? And my friends were very supportive of the fact that I wasn't interested. Like I wasn't being pushed and coerced or anything. But praise the good Lord that I made that decision at a young age and have stuck to it. I'm 40 years old and yet I still, now don't get me wrong, give me a Coke Zero or Diet Coke and I can pound about 10 of those in one sitting, okay? Like you probably just heard me slurp to the end of this Coke Zero that I have in this bottle here. I love me a good soda, carbonation. The caffeine was nice too. But I'm just so grateful that the alcohol and drug thing never got me. Talking about being parents, the generational piece of this, right? The genetic piece, the generational piece, breaking the chains. Like my prayer, my hope and prayer is that I have done something to break those chains. And therefore, as my son grows up, that I am able to help him to learn and understand the negative side effects that can come with participating in drug and alcohol use. Of course, he's going to have to make his own decisions. At the end of the day, we all have our own decisions to make, but I hope and pray that I'm able to create that opportunity and that I'm able to create that educational and that environment in which let's talk about it. Let's not sweep everything under the rug.
Right.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
It's sometimes easier said than done. I know. Because I'm already sitting here like he's 2 years old. I'm sitting here, oh, how am I going to have this conversation? This is not going to be easy, but it's real.
Well,
it's
and we
valid
have-
and got to.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And we had another family member that battled addiction, and it was very much a sweep it under the rug type environment. And so when this started happening inside of our four walls, I absolutely was not going to sweep it under the rug. And I was very honest with the other children, age appropriate honest, right? But because I do think there is a genetic disposition to this addictive behavior, and whether it be alcohol or drugs or other addictions that could come up, I use the reference with my other children. I feel like it's a light switch. It's a light switch in your brain. And I think that in a lot of cases, I'm similar to you. I've never been a big alcohol user. I have terrible migraines. And so it's normally going to make me sicker than it's going to make me have a great time. And so I just am like, this isn't for me. Watching other family members battle addiction kept me from, I could again be part of a group of people. And if they were all smoking pot or doing whatever, I could very easily say, not interested and not participate in that. And because I did fear that what if I do it one time? The first time may be my choice, the second time may not be my choice. And so I've told my kids, hey, it's a light switch in your brain. And if you flip that light switch on, you may not be able to turn it off without professional help. And can it be done? Yes, it can be done. But also at the same time, it could also lead to much more devastating circumstances, which I know you have experienced in this situation with your parents' loss. You said that you struggled, though. You struggled protecting the story. And I know from the book, this was about 10 years before you actually said, okay, I need to share this. And I guess what I want to ask you is, you've struggled with sharing the addiction. Did you think that was going to dishonor their legacy or tarnish the truly good people and good parents that they were?
1000% bingo. You hit it right there. Yeah, it was all about preserving the legacy, right? And so here's the thing. Yeah. So for 10 years, 90 days after my parents passed, because basically the coroner's office had 90 days to come up with the reports, toxicology, death certificates, all the things. My aunt walked into the coroner's office. I refused to go in. I'm going to sit out here in the car. And she gets in the car and says, hey, do you want to read these? And I'm like, nope, threw it in the floorboard, never looked back. And it took me 10 years to even face the truth, because here's the thing, that's written on paper. So whatever is in those documents, in that folder, is now truth.
Did you have an inkling, though, Lauren? Did you have an idea this was drug related at all? Or were you still believing the lie of respiratory failure, heart attack?
Oh, yeah. It was definitely there, the drug piece of it. Because here's the thing. So I just wasn't willing to touch it. I wasn't willing to go there. Looking back, there's a newspaper article that was released right after my parents died. And they actually interviewed my brother. They were pounding the pavement trying to get me to talk. And I was just decline. My brother ended up talking because basically they're like, hey, we're going to run with this anyway. So you might as well give some commentary that could be positive for your parents. And in the byline, the subtitle, basically it acknowledges potential prescription drug addiction or abuse being the case, which is so crazy because that is out there for the world to see, for the public to see. But I wasn't even going to go there. And so I think in my heart, like I had just manifested this thought process of, oh, my mom, she just had all these medications and her body just couldn't take it anymore. Her body just shut down because these medications were just so strong and potent. It wasn't the fact that she literally put a fentanyl patch in the freezer and sucked on it and overdosed. I could not acknowledge there was a choice behind it, a choice behind their actual overdose. Now, as we talked about, Courtney, there is choice. Yes, there is choice, but there's choice in the matter, but not in the essence of, first of all, there's not always a choice, right? Circumstances can play into different things. People enter into addiction in different ways. Let's put it that way, right? So we're not exempt from it just because we all say, I'm never going to do that. What happens if I have surgery and suddenly I'm prescribed this thing and now I'm like, oh, I've been very fortunate that even through pregnancy, like I opted out of no pain medicine. Now, don't get me wrong, I did an epidural. We're going to call that out right here, but I opted out. I just did the Tylenol, ibuprofen, whatever. So circumstantially, something could happen. But when we talk about choices, there are choices involved. Yes, my parents were adults, but they were going to a medical professional being prescribed medication. And oftentimes I wish that they would have had more courage, maybe more wherewithal to say, hey, this isn't working. And now all of a sudden, this is my daily life. And I feel like this is the only thing that helps me to function. Yeah. But when you are the addict walking through that, it's a lot harder to just one day wisen up, because at the end of the day, you're walking through something so painful that nobody else can speak to. I don't know. I can't speak to the pain my parents were experiencing. So for me to say, hey, mom and dad, you should have spoken up and said, man, I'm in a lot of pain, but I'm taking a lot of medication. This just doesn't add up. This doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
Because when you're in the throes of it, unfortunately, you're doing everything you can to survive. They're in survival mode.
That's where a medical professional should have stepped in. This is criminal for a doctor to not say, hey, you know what? We're not actually managing your pain very well because you should not be taking this much medication to manage that pain. There's got to be alternatives. But physical pain of any kind, anybody that's experienced any kind of, like you said, surgery or whatever it may be, you do want that pain to stop, and you are trusting a medical professional at that point to say, this is what's going to help you, and then monitor that, not continue to prescribe, and layer on.
And it's monitoring and it's education, being aware and exploring all the options and doing an exploration. Don't just be another ticket item. Oh, walk in the door. Okay, this is what you're feeling today. Let me write you a script. Bye. See ya. We'll see you in a month. That's where we really have to dig deeper in understanding that. And I think we have come a ways from where we were back in the early 2000s when this happened to my parents. We still have a long ways to go.
Yeah.
But when you think about, I think we talk about the preserving the legacy, because both of my parents made a choice to ingest fentanyl, knowing, because as outlined in the story, my dad overdosed at Thanksgiving. Right in front of me and my brother and my mom. We were asleep, but then we woke up to him having overdose on Thanksgiving morning. We go to the hospital. We take care of things. We are told as 18-year-old, I'm 18, my brother's 21, oh, bad reaction to medication. So my thought is, oh, cholesterol, blood pressure, no big deal. Okay, freak accident. It'll never happen again. But literally in the same breath, my dad said to my mom, and my auntie was in the room, my grandparents were in the room, I went online, I read about it, it did exactly what it was supposed to. My dad knew that if you put that in the freezer, you could suck on it and get a really good high, but it could also kill you. So there was an awareness there. My dad was not aware of the ultimate end result, but it also makes you think, when you are in active addiction, that something can be so painful, so gripping, that knowing that piece of information is still not enough to stop you from doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's hard. That's really hard.
How do you reconcile that? How do you reconcile the reality of your parents' addiction and their awareness and the love and respect, though, that you still hold for them?
Let me tell you, it has also been a journey because anger was such a big part of this whole thing, right? Anger towards them, anger towards God, anger towards the why me, why them, why our family. Didn't we do all things right? Didn't we do it right?
Yeah.
Weren't we a good family? Like all those things. So reconciliation is huge in all of this. And it has taken a lot of time because we talk about the inward focused behaviors. And a lot of times that's not necessarily selfish. But then you turn and say, isn't that kind of selfish to read the label on something, know the side effects, read the risks, and still do it anyways? And I think that's where reconciliation truly has come from time healing, education, understanding of what this addiction is, and really being around other people that are actively living through it or are now in recovery that can speak to it
Mhm.
because I am grateful that I have not walked down that path of addiction to substance like that,
Mhm.
but I truly feel, and I feel like I can use the word empathy, like my heart is so attached to individuals who have walked through addiction. And it's somehow, I'll never truly be able to put myself in their shoes or my parents' shoes, but in so many ways, I feel like I can hold their hand and walk with them.
Mhm.
And what's been so amazing about that journey is how in this time, 22 years of absence, I've been alive longer without my parents than with them. That happened at the 18-year mark, which was like, "Whoa, wow, that was an incredible cross section,
Yeah.
crossroads." But how can I possibly love someone? I loved my parents deeply. Were they perfect? No. Were there things that I was just like, of
Mhm.
course, I'm a teenage girl who you've been through the teenage life with the kids,
Yeah.
right? You've been a teenager yourself. But in the midst of all that, like, how can the absence of 22 years, how can my love still grow for my parents? And that is something that I think has been such a beautiful gift that my love for them has continued to grow and grow and grow, even in their absence. And I'm just grateful for that. Again, it has not been an easy journey, but I think where that love has also grown in the love for myself and the love for my story and the love for my circumstances and realizing like, all right, I got a choice here. Like I can choose how I'm going to respond to this thing.
You talk about falling in love with your story, and that's what you just mentioned, that you've learned to love your story even though it's terribly hard and it was difficult to face, and you said it took many years to reconcile what really had taken place that night with your parents. What does it look like for someone who feels like, man, my story is just too broken, or they're buried in the shame of their story? What advice would you give someone about how they too can fall in love with their story, even when their story is so painfully hard?
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. I've used this analogy and it really the illustration comes from a dear friend. And actually, the title of the book, Shatterproof. Gary Schneeberger helped me to see it this way. Someone can literally take a baseball bat to your life and shatter it into a million pieces.
Mhm.
Yet we, as humans, have the ability through resilience to pick up those pieces and still build a foundation and build a life of joy and purpose, even when it seems like everything in our world is irrevocably shattered. And I think that we sit in our circumstances, and a lot of times, again, it's easy to be like, why me? Why is this happening to me? Why does this keep happening? Enough is enough. And I think for me and what I've experienced in this journey is you do get knocked down and it's just like you feel like you're in constant warfare and you're having to like just sludge your way, pick yourself back up, pick yourself back up. But I think a lot of the gift that I have received in all of this is perspective. So when you walk through those tough times, when you walk to the other side and can find gratitude, even in the darkest days and the hardest moments, when I've recognized that our hardest chapter doesn't have to be our last. And a lot of that is just a perspective shift. And it has come and not all at once. And it's been a journey once again, but it's opening your eyes and ears to the things that can help us shift our perspective, even if it's just like the littlest bit, and to better understand. This is not happening to me. This is happening for me. This is not defining me. This is refining me. When you can start to see, and to me, celebrate the small victories even, because I think a lot of times we feel like, oh, we only celebrate the big things in life, the big victories. But taking inventory of your day, taking inventory of your life, and recognizing that those small victories matter as well, because those start to build up and those will start to build you up. And when you do walk across that bridge to more challenges, more adversity, because it's coming, you start to equip yourself. And it doesn't mean they don't happen to you, but you're now more equipped to be able to rise up through those challenges and maybe to eliminate some of that why me thought process and say, okay, what am I going to do to be stronger for this? Instead of unpacking our bags in the mess and the sadness of it all and saying, all right, this is my life. This is where I'm at. No, we're going to pack our bags and we're going to take a stroll. We're going to keep moving up this road of life and figure out how we can find joy even in some of those challenging moments, find purpose in the things we do and the moments we create for ourselves. And I do truly believe gratitude starts to shine brighter when we allow that to happen, because I think gratitude gets pushed into the corner a lot of times in life because we take things for granted. That's just what we do, right? And if all was good in the world, then gratitude wouldn't exist because we would just, everything's handed to us.
Right.
But man, when you can just lean into that gratitude and say, okay, this is a victory today. This was a victory. This thing that I did was a victory. It starts to definitely put the setbacks in its place and say, you know what? Not today, sir. Get back there.
And again, because I've read the book, when you did begin to share this story, I think you've seen a drastic shift in God's purpose for your parents' story, because you have now been able to share with so many people. You're speaking, you already have a very public platform in your world of sports journalism, but there's now this other piece of you with this book and with speaking. And so it's showing how their legacy didn't die with them, and it doesn't end with addiction. It ends with healing for others who you have now shared this story, and they have come to you and said, it made a difference. What I've heard about your parents, what I've heard about your story has changed my life or has encouraged me to continue on the path of rehabilitation or whatever it may be. But that would have never happened had you stayed in the secret and in the shame. And I think when we start opening our hands to our stories and to our hard parts, God says, watch how I'm going to fill that empty space.
Oh,
Would
I
you
love that
agree?
so much. I love that so much. Yes. Oh, that's so
Now,
good. Yeah.
I want to go to this place with you because it was something about the book and about this woman that, man, it made me feel like, how can I be more like her? And it's your Auntie Linda. And here's why. She took a very difficult situation. This was her sister. This was her best friend. And she stepped in, and Uncle Mike. But because we talk to moms mostly, that's what I want to focus on. Aunt Linda steps in and becomes another mom for you. And it spoke so loudly to me, the opportunity that we have as women and as moms for stepping up for others, especially when they need a mom mentor figure. Let's talk a little bit about what you've learned from Auntie Linda and how we can be a woman like that.
Oh, that's so sweet. I can't wait to share this with her because she's going to be thrilled. Because I think she certainly, gosh, stepped in without a beat. There was no blueprint. There was no conversation. Like, if something were to happen to your parents, then what? There was never a conversation. And it was literally that day she pulled into my grandparents, the driveway, the parking spot at my grandparents' condo, and just stepped right in. And she did it in a way that was so loving, so gracious, and with a lot of grace. I'll tell you that, because she's grieving too. She's grieving the loss of her sister, her brother-in-law. But for her, it's what am I going to do now? How am I going to pick up the pieces? How am I going to help move this family forward in the wake of all this? And I think in a lot of ways, she didn't give her time, herself space and time to grieve, especially early on. And we've had conversations around that a lot. And I think that is where you just, in life, I think that a lot of times we're appointed in such a divine way. We have a role and we're appointed to different things, different people, different roles. And a lot of times we don't even wear that title or see that title. But in so many ways, she just embraced that title of someone that is my Auntie Linda by blood, but also like a mom, like a sister, like a best friend, like all rolled into one, which is beautiful and complicated at the same time. You could ask her that same question because this relationship that we've created. And she was there. She was there when I was born in Cuba. My dad was on the naval base there. She's been a big part of my life. But the relationship for us has just grown so exponentially. And I had a lot of friends that even said to me, like, I don't know who my Auntie Linda would be. Like, if my
Mhm.
parents passed away, I don't know who that would be for me.
Mhm.
And never did I think, gosh, if this happened to me, like, who would step in? Oh, I bet it would be Auntie Linda. It was never even a thought because you're young and like you're just doing life. And so for her to step in, and I think what has just been so amazing about that journey and process is praise the good Lord for that relationship and someone that my parents left us here, myself and my brother. My brother was in the military and, 21 and maybe standing on his 2 feet a little bit more firmer than I was at the time. But praise the good Lord for having someone step in like my Auntie Linda, didn't miss a beat, didn't question, just did, just went all in. And someone that I can truly say, where would my life be without
Mhm.
that person? And as you said, credit to Uncle Mike and my gymnastics coaches, and credit to a lot of people, but truly, when you pull the curtains back and look at this situation, the Auntie Linda. And I think that's where we can all learn that lesson. A lot of times we don't know people's story, we don't know their journey, and we don't have to be part of someone's life for a lifetime to make a true impact. And I think sometimes it gets lost on us because we think, what does this matter? What does this mean? And through different things and a specific story, I've learned that it only takes 30 seconds, right, to make an immeasurable impact. That you can open up, you can have a conversation, you can say one thing, you can share one piece of your heart with someone, whether it's a loved one, a relative, an acquaintance, a neighborhood friend, whoever it is. And that could be the very thing that just creates that little bit of shift in perspective that puts them on the track to finding hope and healing. And my Auntie Linda was that in so many ways for me. And she was a mother of 2 boys who I'm very close with as well, my cousins, Justin and Jason. So she already had that motherly instinct. But man, let me tell you, she just swooped right in with that parachute and said, come on, baby. Like, you're all mine. We're going to do this thing and we're going to do it together. Has it been easy? Absolutely not. But we've done it. And without Auntie Linda, woo, I don't know where the heck I'd be today. Wouldn't be sitting in this chair telling my story. I can tell you that.
Well, and what you just said, though, about the 30 seconds earlier, we talked about your laser focus as a gymnast. And I think sometimes we get laser focused in our own lives, our own motherhood, our own relationships. And especially nowadays where everybody's just so busy, right? We're so busy with this or that. And we get laser focused on that. And it prevents us from opening our eyes to maybe the person that is at the checkout lane or the neighbor or whatever it may be that really needs somebody to listen maybe for 30 seconds. And that's a really good thought of maybe removing the blinders a little bit and our laser focus and opening ourselves and asking God, hey, God, how can I show up for somebody else today and it not just be all about what I need?
I love that. Absolutely.
Now,
So
I'm going to
good.
put you on the spot. I'm going to close this out with putting you on the spot. And here's why. You're the queen of two things. You are the queen of the sideline shimmy. And I'm not going to make you get up and dance. So you can, though I think you would do it. See, you would totally do it.
Oh,
You would
yeah. Oh,
totally do
yeah.
it. And I love that. I love that about you. But you were also the queen of 30-second interviews. but you are normally the one asking the questions in 30 seconds when a coach is running off the sidelines and they're headed into the locker room, and you've got 30 seconds to figure out, what am I going to ask them and what do the viewers want to hear about this first half of the game? And so I decided that
Uh-huh.
I am going to ask you a question, but you only have 30 seconds to answer. So are
Ooh,
you ready?
ooh, ooh, okay.
All right.
Okay, I'm ready. I think I'm ready. I hope I'm
Okay.
ready.
All
Okay.
right. The good news is I edit, so if it takes you more than 30 seconds, we'll work around it. Not like
Okay.
live TV.
Okay, I'm ready.
I'm giving you 30 seconds in heaven.
Oh
What are you
my
going to do with it?
gosh. Ooh-wee. That's good.
Mhm.
I am going to run as fast as I can, just as I did in the terminal of that airport, hoping that my dad was gonna be at the other end. And I'm gonna wrap my arms around my parents, and now my brother too, who is there in heaven,
Mhm.
and tell them how very much I love them. And to show them and let them know that they too can love their stories with all their hearts, because
Mm.
it is truly making an impact down here on earth. And I know in my heart of hearts that they can see that, they can feel that, they know that.
Mhm.
But my goal and hope in life is to help, just as I have learned to fall in love with my story, to help others to do the same. And while my parents never had that chance while they were here, I just want them to know that their story, the good and the hard, is the kind of legacy that they've left here with me, and that I hope to pass along to my son Mason, and will do everything in my power to do that. And yeah, I just want them to know that they are so loved, and that they can finally rest in knowing that their story is making an impact in so many lives, and that it truly is such a gift. And that's something I'm grateful for.
Mhm.
Oh, I just want to stand there, wrap my arms around them. I can just feel it. Kind of like after the gymnastics meet that I competed in, when the Rutgers gymnastics coach came over and offered the scholarship.
Mhm.
We were hugging and embracing in that moment, and I just remember, like, the look on their faces, like, when that scholarship offer, "Hey, the scholarship is for you," like, the joy that they felt
Mhm.
was so powerful. And I just
Yeah.
want them, I can just see the joy on their faces now, that their story matters, and that they are making an immeasurable impact here on earth, even in their physical absence, but spiritually they're here. And I'm
Yeah.
just grateful for that. Woo, girl. Wow. You took me somewhere. Oh, I'm gonna
Well,
ponder that for a while. That's a really, I'd love to be able to eloquently, mm, that might be a good idea for another book.
maybe. Maybe. You heard it here first.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Oh my gosh, that is powerful. My heart is like beating right now thinking about it. I'd also tell you 30 seconds isn't enough. Not in this case. I need more than 30 seconds. 30 seconds. But
Yeah,
man, that is a question to ponder for a lot of people. Ooh,
it is.
girl.
I know you don't know me, and we've just chatted via Instagram, but I knew that I was drawn to you all those years ago. And it may not even matter because I'm sure other people have told you, but I'm so proud of your willingness to share this really hard story. And I think that all those years that you felt like if you shared the truth of your parents' story, that it was going to shame their legacy. I just want to tell you that it absolutely doesn't. It shines a light on their life. And more importantly than their life, it shines a light on what God is capable of doing in really hard, difficult circumstances and how he can use that for good. And so I'm so honored that you're willing to share it, that you're willing to stand on the platform that God has given you with journalism and say, hey, you know what? Not everything is perfect, but it can be made perfect when God uses our stories and we shine the light on what he's capable of doing in our lives. You are a shining light, and the story that you were honoring of your parents' legacy it's just incredible, what the work that you're doing and the willingness to do it. So I just want to tell you, I'm proud of you and thank you for being willing.
Thank you. It means a lot to me. Wow. This is cool. I think this is just so cool that you and I have been on this journey for a handful of years now. And here we are having this conversation. And I hope this is the start of many more.
Yeah.
Courtney, you speaking of bright lights, are such a bright light. And for you to reach out and to continue pressing in, it's just amazing. And thank you for bringing this story into the light and so many others in your journey as well. And I just, I'm honored. So thank you.
Of course. Are we best friends? I think we just became best friends.
BFFs. I don't know. You're not a best friend until you come down to the sidelines and shimmy with me, and then we'll see.
Girl, you say no more. Say no more. I absolutely would come down on the sidelines and shimmy with you.
I love
Absolutely.
that. Yes, let's do it. It's a date. We're going to figure it out. But I
That
appreciate
sounds
you.
great.
I appreciate everyone listening, leaning in. I'm just grateful. So let's bring it out into the light, illuminate the world, and make a difference, my friend.
I'm with you. Thank you so much, Lauren. I appreciate your time. If you or someone you love is battling addiction, please know you are not alone and it is not too late. There is hope, there is help, and there is healing. Talk to someone, reach out for support, and remember, addiction does not define your worth. You are deeply loved and never beyond God's reach. Thanks so much for listening to The Mom Show with Courtney Doyle. Remember to check the show notes for any links, books, or resources that are mentioned in each episode. We want to be sure this blesses other mothers, and in order to do this, if you're listening via podcast, be sure that you like and share. If you could write a review, that would be fantastic. It helps us get in front of other moms. If you're watching via YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button. This way, you won't ever miss an episode. We want to make sure that we increase our reach to other mothers who need a little encouragement, a community, and a whole lot of Jesus. We're so glad you're here.